So I just want to say before we start that the way this works for me is like, you know how it's really easy to be a life coach now? It's just sort of like, I'm a life coach. I like took a class and now I'm a life coach. So basically that's what we are tonight. We're life coaches, and you're going to get your license after tonight. So our job is to listen to Michael talk about his obsession and then sort of help him through it.
I'm getting free therapy, basically.
Exactly.
Is it covered?
Yes, it is.
Well, my obsession, let me just start right off the bat. It's watching and rewatching old movies and the Golden Girls TV show. I can't believe I said that in public. To get to the root of it is pretty easy. I was a very withdrawn Italian-American only child, which is very rare, in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. And my parents were wonderful, but they never asked me what I was thinking. I really barely spoke. It took everything to even raise my hand in school and say something, even if I had to go to the bathroom. Now I'm going to get very personal. I once crapped my pants because I was afraid to go. I have to go to the bathroom. And I just did it again. No kidding. But I found a catharsis and a refuge at the local movie theater. It was called the Walker Theater. And for $1, you saw movies that had crash landed in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, movies that didn't make it. Occasionally there'd be a good one like Rosemary's Baby, which is, to me, is one of the perfect movies. But generally it was really shitty movies that I just adored because I didn't know the difference between good and bad taste. I just had taste. It wasn't in my parents' house, everything was covered in plastic, including my father. But I would see films by, starring Elizabeth Taylor, Julie Andrews, and Mia Farrow. Those were my three divas. Mm-hmm. And I just was swept away by the costumes, the scenery, the dialogue, the accessories, and I didn't think they were bad. They spun my head around, and years later, let's jump to the present, I have 5 different movie clubs where I force my friends to sit around and watch the same movies I grew up watching. In a way, because maybe misery loves company, and I'm forcing them to endure the bad movies that I love. And the first movie club that I started 15 years ago started at Lipsinka's house. You know Lipsinka, the drag performer?
Yeah.
Of course.
And then we splintered out, because she didn't like commenting during the movie. So we splintered off to my apartment, and that's been literally running 15 years, that movie club.
And so, how old were you when you started going to this movie theater?
Probably about 10 or 11.
And you would go alone, like a latchkey child kind of thing?
I would go alone, or I would somehow scare up, cousins or friends. And my aunt is a nun, and she actually took me to Sound of Music. And because it was a nun movie, they swept us in for free, and that's what addicted me to the complimentary lifestyle. Besides, I adore the movie. I mean, it has everything. It has nuns and Nazis and kids and puppets. It works on every level. And then we also saw Trouble with Angels, which is another nun movie. Again, they swept us in for free.
Oh wait, is that the one with Haley Mills?
Yeah, and Rosalind Russell. And Gypsy Rose Lee plays a dance instructor. And it's directed by Ida Lupino.
Really?
Yeah, I know shit like that.
I remember that part in the movie where they're all dancing, like they're doing like a frug or something, and the camera's above them, and they're all like dancing like this.
Yeah, and the killer is, not to give away the ending, but Haley Mills chooses God. At the end, she chooses religion. And even little atheistic me was very moved. It's a beautiful ending. You feel, and when her friend, who is the brat, stands there and is over the fact that Haley has chosen God, and then realizes the passion of her commitment, and is touched herself. It's one of the most beautiful endings since The Bells of St. Mary's. When Ingrid Bergman realizes she's not being transferred because they don't like her, it's because she has cancer. I love Hollywood. These movies were my salvation.
So, did you have a TV at home?
Yes, we also had a TV. So I grew up, once I got to adolescence and stuff like that, I would watch shows like The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which I then became addicted to. And when that started rerunning in the 80s and 90s, I could not get enough of watching Mary Tyler Moore over and over again. I think it's the perfect sitcom.
It is, and a lot of people say that a lot of sitcoms now are still stealing stuff from each other more.
Well, Golden Girls, which is my current obsession, only because they don't show Mary that much, it's only on once a night. Golden Girls is on 4 different channels, 4 in a row on the Hallmark Channel at night, 11 to 1.
Right, and you said that you emailed me that it's sort of like a warm glass of milk at night or something for you.
It's comfort TV, and they ripped off a lot of episodes from Mary Tyler Moore, a lot of plot lines,
Uh-huh.
but they made it fresh.
Uh-huh. So it's still, now you go, like tonight, you'll go home and watch Golden Girls.
Yes, I'm actually looking forward to. There's only 6 Golden Girls episodes I can't stand, and usually they're the heavy-handed ones about homeless people on Christmas or anti-Semitism, because the show made its points better in a subtle way than when they hit you over the head with them. Same with Mary Tyler Moore. She had a few heavy-handed social issues on her show.
So, okay, let's just go through your life a little bit here. So you're watching these movies as a child. You're 10. That happens. You are a teenager. What are you watching then? Like, what's
I'm
keeping
still
you?
addicted to movies. The local theater was there all through my growing up process.
Uh-huh.
The Walker Theater.
And then when you went into adulthood and began your fantastic writing career in the city, like what was that about? Like,
Well,
what were
then
you
I had
watching?
to see new movies and new TV because that's what I was covering. To stay relevant, you can't just write about the past.
Right.
However, I kept my comfort addiction to the old stuff, and there are certain movies I could watch over and over again. The April Fools is a very obscure movie with Catherine Deneuve and Jack Lemmon. It's kind of a screwball romantic comedy. It was a total flop when it came out in the 60s. But when I saw it at the Walker Theater, I was transported by it. And I watch it over and over again. I just adore it. And my main movie club, the one that started at Lipsinka's house, is a bad movie club. And we specialize in bad/good. You know, in other words, they're so awful that they're fun to watch.
Yeah.
And our #1 film is The Room. Now, I'm not talking about Room, which was up for the Oscar last
Right.
year. That's a great film about a mother.
The Pinter. It's based on the Pinter play, right?
No.
Okay.
No, the Room is by this weird guy with a weird face and a weird accent named Tommy Wiseau, and he's the actor, writer, director, producer. He's a quadruple threat. He sucked at all 4 of those things, and it's just the most insane, misguided, overwrought drama about betrayal. And when audiences started hooting and throwing things, they remarketed it as a dark comedy. We always meant it to be funny. Bullshit.
And yeah, it's sort of recent-ish, isn't it? Is it?
It's about 11 years old.
Okay, yeah.
And that's my favorite kind of bad movie because it thinks it's good.
Right.
Like there are movies like Valley of the Dolls, which I also worship, but they know that's a trash heap.
Well, I mean, that gets to the point of a campy film, like, which is such a rare alchemy when something's campy to me. Like, Showgirls is campy, but I think my friend thinks that maybe that Stonewall movie that came out in the summer, that might be a campy movie, because it has all the requirements, like
That was
budget,
possibly the worst. That was worse than The Room.
delusional director.
That was like they
yeah.
invented a fictional white pretty boy from
Yeah.
the Midwest who threw the first brick at Stonewall. It's like,
So which is
can
sort
you
of,
say offensive?
is there like an age, a cap on the year of what you'd watch? Like, if, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I'm
what
not
you were
that.
obsessed with?
When TCM, which of course is Channel 82 on Time Warner, that's the old movie channel. When they show Silence, I don't watch. When they show 20s and 30s, I don't watch.
But it's
40s will start to get interesting, but my real heyday was the 60s, because that's when I was growing up, and that's when movies meant so much to me. They really spoke to me.
And did you? Okay, so let's go back to your childhood, and you're like 10, or that's when this obsession started, right? Like
Yes.
10ish. Were you happy? Were you a happy child? Were you?
No, I was a horribly unhappy child. I was
Uh-huh.
withdrawn. I didn't communicate. Nobody asked me what I was thinking. I was doing very well at school because I applied myself and wanted to please the teachers, so I was an amazing student. But emotionally, I was very dwarfed, let's say, and I really found a release in movies because they took me away to other experiences. Also, maybe I was unhappy about my parents' relationship. They weren't speaking during most of my growing up. So I immersed myself. The movie The April Fools that I just mentioned is about a married woman who's unhappy and runs off with Jack Lemmon. All of my favorite movies at the time were about adultery. Guide for the Married Man was a comedy about how to commit adultery. An all-star comedy with Lucille Ball and Robert Morris, and it was directed by Gene Kelly, and I loved it. And obviously I was living out a fantasy in between the Nazi nun movies. Which
I wonder if there's something about your. Well, let me just. I don't want to like lionize you like I do, because I think you are one of my favorite writers. You are.
Thank you.
You've always been, ever since I first read you when I was 19 years old. I think your writing is breezy and great and energetic and wonderful, and I wonder if these movies somehow affected your voice. If maybe like the character, the banter in them was something that you really latched onto? Would that
Yeah,
make
I
sense?
loved movies with great banter, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, to me is one of my favorite movies, based obviously on the Edward Albee play.
Uh-huh.
That's another perfect film, directed by Mike Nichols. Snappy dialogue. Actually, after seeing that, I went into the garage. I must have been, I don't know, 14. I wrote on little pieces of paper an entire play that was a complete ripoff of that, with a married couple fighting and trying to be bitchy and funny. And actually, when I went to see the movies at the Walker Theater, I would then run home and write reviews for myself on index cards. For no one but myself, because who the hell was going to read my little reviews? But obviously, I was a critic in the making, and that was my form of expression. Now I have all these movie clubs and readers to tell about these movies, and I'm on a show on Logo now called Cocktails and Classics, where we sit around and watch a lot of the same movies that I saw as a kid, and talk about them and act them out and talk about the backstory.
When you first started writing for The Voice, that was pretty much your first big
Yes.
correct? Yeah?
Yes.
So what were you, how old were you then, and what were you watching, and like, how did that
That was in
happen?
1984.
Uh-huh.
To me, the 80s were not a golden age of film.
No.
There were fun movies like Wall Street, Working Girl, but to me, they don't rival All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard and Breakfast at Tiffany's, because I'm gay.
Yeah, no, I just read one of your collections of columns, and a lot of them cover these parties from the 80s that are so incredible to read, because you're like, the way that people were about fame then is so universal to now. I think
Right.
that this you're looking through your body of work over the past couple days, I've realized how so nothing has changed. Just the way that people are about their fame, and the way that people present themselves when they're famous, and it's things that you've logged for 20, 30 years now, and there's something so grossly universal about the superficiality. Does that make sense?
The fame is a constant, and the striving for fame is a constant, and this was pre-reality show, so people didn't have that venue to seek fame.
Right.
They had to do it running around nightclubs and wearing outrageous outfits and doing crazy things. And I chronicled that, and frankly, the events of the 80s were so much fun because of that, to be an observer of, that I didn't want to run home and watch TV. I didn't want to so much go to movie screenings. I wanted to be in the nightlife. Tonight I'm not planning to go to a nightclub because I know that's not going to happen. It's not about that. Everything's transmorphed onto the internet, and maybe a lot of cable channels and things like that. That's where the excitement is.
Right. Well, I wanted to bring that up too, because I think, gosh, I can't remember which book it is of yours, of the collections, but you start talking about, being a soundbite whore. Like, so in the 2000s, there was this time when, there are all those VH1 shows that are just like the crazy life of Britney, and like all these shows like that, and you became a talking head on those shows.
Well, in the 90s, for 7 years, I was on the Gossip Show on E, and we each got to have our own segment and just tell gossip items, so we got paid. It was all SAG-AFTRA, union, paid, wonderful, professional. When that went off in 2000, then it was all about the soundbite shows, which didn't pay. And my life became overrun with these shows, and I was wildly famous from doing them. I could go anywhere in the world, and people would chase me down the street for my autograph. Oh, you're the guy from VH1. But it became oppressive because I was doing 3 or 4 of them a week, and it was things like the 101 Biggest Celebrity Meltdowns. I love the 80s, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they would send you more and more research for each one, so that they wanted a specific answer for each question. It became so meta and so overdone. And that eventually imploded.
It did, didn't it? There's nothing like that around now. Right?
No, you don't see that many talking heads on TV. It's more, now I get booked on things like CNN, believe it or not, to talk about culture and actually have like a 5-minute segment where you can have a conversation.
And
I prefer that because it's not edited. Everything you say gets on.
You said that in the article I wrote that I read that you wrote. You said that it's better when it's live, because then everything you're going to say is going to be on.
But that's also the liability, in that if you say something, wonky live, that's there forever.
Right.
And it's very nerve-wracking. Like right now, I'm freaking actually. What am I going to say that's going to ruin my career? But it's always a danger in doing live TV, and yet you get that adrenaline rush knowing that you're going out at that moment.
Right.
What you're saying is going out to the masses. It's very exciting.
I'm just curious about this. So there was sort of like a glut of talking head television in
Yes.
the 2000s, right? Would you
Yes,
say around
yes.
the 2000s? And then that kind of crashed and burned. There's not that much going on. But now you're still. Do you think are you making more money as a talking head now than you were then?
Well, I got paid to be on logo, so yeah, I made no money from being a talking head back then.
Uh-huh.
It was all just comp.
Right.
And my father even said, like, why are you doing this? You know, and I was like, well, I'm making good money with my writing, and this is part of my profession, and it's giving
Exposure.
me incredible exposure.
Right.
And a lot of people put the face they see on TV together with your byline, and they could say, oh, I like your writing. Otherwise, they wouldn't know you're just an anonymous writer walking down the street.
Right. Right.
And I do crave validation. I mean, there is something addictive. This is a whole other obsession about having strangers say they love you and love your work.
Right. Right.
And that's totally crazy. That's not right. But it's the basis of showbiz. We weren't loved enough as kids, and so we crave it from strangers.
I mean, I feel like more people should be more honest about the fact that they seek validation. That's just.
I'm
we all do.
totally upfront about it.
Good.
Yeah, because everyone lies. Oh, you know, my friend says, "Oh, you need that. I don't need that." But she needs it. We all need it. We all want. Who doesn't want to be loved?
I mean, look at the craziness of Facebook. Everyone's just like, "Hi, I'm here," oh, you know.
And I will block anyone on Facebook who says the slightest negative thing about me. It's just block.
Yeah.
You can't control the real world. If someone says you suck on the street, there's nothing you can do about it. But on your little Facebook page, block.
That's great. You know, the way you write, I think the thing that at its core is an obsession you have is with dishonesty. And you know, despite what you're talking about, you could be talking about you know, models or some stupid movie that makes no sense that no one cares about. But still, there's this at the core of it is this need for people to be honest, and I bring that up to bring up the fact that you are quite a proponent back in the day of outing, and
That's so boring to me, right? I'm sorry.
right? Yeah, but that's what I wanted to talk about that because I think it's interesting that it's not going on now, that it's boring.
Well, to me, it's interesting that I do fight for integrity and honesty, but then I also immerse myself in the illusion of films, which is really what we're here to talk about.
Right.
I love the magic of cinema, and I'm like Blanche Dubois, you know, take me away.
What does it feel like when you go home tonight? How does it feel? Are you relaxed? Are you thrilled? Are you rehearsing the lines? Are you saying them aloud like Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of thing?
The lines of what?
Of the film you're watching.
Well, when I go home, I'm going to watch Golden Girls.
Right.
And it's a good feeling. It's just, you know, out of the 4 that they're going to have, at least 3 of them are going to be really good. As far as the films, yeah, I've seen Valley of the Dolls so many times. I know every line. I really was devastated when Patty Duke died.
Yeah.
Not because of Miracle Worker. I hated the Miracle Worker. But because of Valley of the Dolls. That's sick.
I think they're making a remake of it, aren't they? Are they doing a remake?
They should never touch. Don't touch the perfect movies,
Right.
Hollywood.
I know. It's like when they remade Carrie. It was so sad.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't remake Carrie.
Yeah.
They should remake The Room. Remake the bad ones, make them good.
So, what's the movie that you're most obsessed with right now?
Well, we have a movie called The Baby that we love in my movie club, and this is a 70s film made in Canada where this woman has her grown son infantilized. He's in diapers and in a crib just because she's twisted. And he's playing along with it. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. Like, he's like, goo, goo, gaga. And the woman is played by Ruth Roman, who was a Hitchcock actress from Strangers on a Train. She used to be a credible actress. Now she has like a lopsided wig, and she's really campy. And then Anjanette Comer is this very bizarre actress that I love, plays a social worker who's trying to get the baby away from her. presumably for the baby's own good, but she has an ulterior motive, which is Anjanette Comer's husband was infantilized in an accident, and he needs a playmate. And in the course of their battle, she buries Ruth Roman alive in a ditch. And the movie is not quite as good as The Room because it knows it's being crazy. You know, it's a little nudge. It knows it's being campy and funny, but it's so damn good. It's so out there.
So, a movie that doesn't know it's camp is probably the best kind of film.
Yeah, to me, that's The Room.
The Room does not know
He
it's
thinks
camp.
Tommy Wiseau, the author, director, etc., thinks he made Streetcar Named Desire, and he still does.
Well, I've always wondered this about like Paul Verhoeven. That's saying his name right. Like Showgirls. Do you think Showgirls knew it was campy?
I do. And I've interviewed Joe Esterhaus, who wrote it. And Showgirls is another one of my favorites. But I've never watched it with my movie club for the very reason that it knows it's being over the top. And, you know, the underwater blowjob. And
Right.
the lines like, must be weird not having anybody come on you. Not that I've seen it and know every line. And how about everybody's getting AIDS and shit? Great film. But it knows it's being out there.
Right.
And they even tried to turn it into, the studio tried to turn it into a Rocky Horror type interactive midnight movie. They actually handed out scripts and everything, and it didn't work. That kind of thing has to happen organically. And it did happen organically for Showgirls through the years, where people caught on.
Do you think that, are you actively looking for the next camp classic?
We always are, but I've seen literally 500 of them, and there are so many channels now that you don't even have to search. I used to have to go scouring through Kim's Video. Remember Kim's Video?
Yeah.
Where they had these weird little movies that you couldn't get anywhere else. And also Dennis Dermody writes for Paper Magazine. He knows every obscure film. He would supply movies. He was like this drug dealer to my movie club. And now you don't have to do that because there's TCM, and then if you go in the 1200s, there's Get TV, Me TV, Antenna TV, Movies Channel, and they show really obscure shit from the past.
But don't you kind of, I would imagine that you would maybe want to go with me to go see Mother's Day, that horrible movie that just came out. Like, do you have any
New Year's
desire?
Day was the most painful thing I've ever seen.
But aren't those sort of awful that you kind of want to see them?
Not now, maybe in 10 years.
I see.
It's too close,
it's like wine,
too
it's a
dangerous.
fine wine.
Yeah.
It has to age in a
Now it's
barrel.
just painful where you're squirming, but given some foresight, you could kind of look back and say, that was a good bad movie.
Okay. Do you, all right, what about like the times you were at your lowest? I want to know what you were watching. Like, I like when the Village Voice folded or did whatever it did, and you
Believe it or not, it didn't fold.
I know it's bad.
still out there.
It's bad. But I mean, what I mean, like when your column ended, and
Right.
I'm just trying to think of a time that might have been really hard for you. I was wondering if like you watched something different at those times.
No, it's always the same movies that give comfort. Anything with Julie Andrews, Mia Farrow, Liz Taylor. Rosemary's Baby, like I said, is perfect because it's not a bad movie. It's a brilliant movie, directed by Roman Polanski, based on the Ira Levin novel. And they did remake it and they ruined it.
Right.
And the great thing about it is everything is seen from Rosemary's point of view. There's no scene where you see her husband meet with the neighbors and make a deal with the devil. Oh, you can have the devil fuck my wife and in exchange for my career. You learn that as Rosemary is gradually learning that. From the weird drink the neighbors give her, from the scratches she wakes up with, from the way her husband's career is taking off and he's acting weirdly. And I didn't watch very much of the remake. I bet they showed the husband meeting with the cast of us. I just bet they did. They made the neighbor, the Ruth Gordon character, into a predatory lesbian in the remake.
It's always helpful, yeah.
But see, I prefer 1960s horrible homophobic portrayals. To me, I get off on Boys in the Band, Killing of Sister George, just because at the time that was groundbreaking. That's all there was. To even show hideous, horrible, hateful gays was kind of brave because nobody was showing any kind of gays.
Interesting.
That's my take on it.
Do you have any feelings about writing a film? Do these
No.
helpful? No?
I have no aptitude for writing anything other than what I do, which is very quick, witty little bites. I don't like anything long form or screenplay. I'd rather really just enjoy what other people do in those genres.
Mm-hmm. And so you feel you sit in the role as a critic pretty securely. right? That's where you...
I do, and I show a lot of appreciation even when I write about these old obscure films. My love for them really comes across in what I write, even as I'm sort of making fun of them. I'm showing a great affection for them.
Well, but I see that in your writing, because your writing is so present tense. You're always like going through a space, or it just feels like, and this happened, and then that happened, and this happened, almost like a film in a way. You've got a very filmic way of writing, I suppose, I want to say.
I've had relationships where I feel, and I haven't had that many relationships, but when I have, it's almost like I'm in a movie, like it's not really happening to me. And I have to return the movie at midnight. Especially once I had this very gallant, French guy who knew the right wine with what course, perfectly dressed, and it was like, I'm Catherine Deneuve now with Yves Montand. How did this happen, and when does this end?
Wait, that's kind of cool. So do you often do that in your real life? You're like, I am like me and Farrah right now. I need to get a haircut. Or
yes. It's so much more fun to think of life that way. That I'm just starring in a movie.
Do you ever do that with Golden Girls too?
Well, I'm old enough, but if they redid Golden Girls, actually, they would have to be in their 80s and 90s. Like, you cannot have women in their 50s. Like,
right.
Oh, how outrageous! A woman in her 50s got a date. It's a whole other. 90's the new 60, right? Which is cool. But what I love about Golden Girls is, again, it's the banter, it's the zingers, the slow burns, the way they can just read each other's B's, and yet there's a real love there, and they really are there for each other. Though what pisses me off is that, like 2 weeks after they all pledged total love for each other, we'll be there for you no matter what. We're a family. B. Arthur met Leslie Nielsen on the show, went off and married him, and that was the end of the show.
Oh.
Because she wanted to leave. And then they came back with Golden Palace, which was just the other three, and it didn't work.
Because Don Cheadle.
Yeah, and they had a gay chef in the pilot, but that was it. But with any of the links, any of the four coming out of the chain, it wouldn't have worked. It didn't have to be B. Arthur, even though to me she's the best one. You needed all four to make the show.
Have you been to Los Angeles and seen the gay Golden Girls the drag Golden Girls?
I've seen it in New York, yeah.
Oh yeah? Did they come to New York? They did?
Well, they had a different version.
Oh.
And they were stopped actually by the producers of Golden Girls who said it was copyright infringement, so.
Right. Oh well. I have more to say, but I think we should open up to questions. If anyone has any question for Mr. Musto here. Yes.
Are there any
new sitcoms?
Newish.
I don't watch them, I'm sorry. I really should spend more time.
I'm totally new, like the last 50 years.
Oh, that's what he
That's newish now.
Suddenly
That's newish.
Susan. I like Brooke Shields.
And Ann Magnuson was in that too, right?
Yeah, we love Ann Magnuson.
We love Ann Magnuson.
Friends? Do you like Friends?
Friends?
I do. I love Phoebe. I love Lisa Kudrow. I think she's genius.
So have you watched anything new
No.
recently? Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
And that's a problem.
30 Rock. Girls.
No,
Broad
and that's a
City.
terrible problem. I did watch the first Transparent, and it was good.
It's great. Yeah. You
I
should-
saw the first Girls also.
Yeah, I like Girls.
Here's a confession. I don't have HBO.
Oh my God.
I save like $9 a month.
I
don't even have DVR. I have a VCR/DVD machine.
Really?
So I actually tape onto a video. I don't have DVR. You save like what, 50 cents a month or something?
You watch your.
I have a flip phone.
You watch all this stuff on VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And you're truly appointment television. You'll go home tonight and you'll be like, oh my God, Golden Girls happens at 11:30.
Well, no, I can miss it, but I like to be there.
Right.
Wow. It's on 3 other channels if you miss it on Hallmark.
Wow, so I love
And
that.
of course, my friend has box sets of Golden Girls, but I like to watch it when other people are watching it. That's why I like my movie club. We're a family. When it's on Hallmark Channel, I know somebody out there is watching it at the same time as me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's a little isolating to watch a movie by yourself.
Wait, so that's very sweet. So you're feeling like kind of like a communal connection to other people while you're watching.
Other sad people.
That's so nice.
Housewives
I love
and
that.
stuff.
I love that. I never thought about it. I guess I don't know. I guess that's the way I felt when I was like really addicted to soap operas when I was a teenager. Like everyone's watching it, right? Like
Oh, I loved All My Children.
oh
Erica Kane, Mrs. Lum, Phoebe Wallingford. Not that I watched.
I was more of an As the World Turns person.
Oh, Victoria.
Lily and Holden. Holden, oh my god, he was so hot.
What's the one where Marlena was twins or something?
That's Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
Yes?
Michael, do you have a take on the current Saturday Night Live, and if so, what is it?
I've stopped watching that as well. I'm sorry. I think Kristen Wiig was probably the last good one on the show. But I was addicted even during the horrible years when it was like Mary Gross. And believe it or not, they have huge future superstars like Ben Stiller, Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr. Those were the worst years because they weren't clicking on that show.
Right.
But I never would have missed an SNL back then.
So, but just for your work, you don't have to watch current stuff right now? It doesn't have to, it's not like something you have to do?
Well, I see every new movie and I see every Broadway play, so I'm quite plugged into the things I write about. I would never take away from my relevance as far as covering the popular culture of the moment.
Right.
I have plenty of time because, like, you know, that French guy dumped me.
So you are seeing lots of films, lots of new films. all
I
the
see
time.
everything. I see more than anyone as far as new films, new theater.
Right. There's this line like there's in one of your books that you were talking about, like, I know I've seen too many films when the wedding planner was better than the wedding singer, and that was different than the wedding this, the wedding that. Like there are all
Yeah,
these
Wedding Crashers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I would love to know from the audience if anyone has an opinion. Is there anything sad about me being so reliant on revisiting these old shows and movies, or is it just something you enjoy? So why rock the boat? Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Does anyone have obsessions like that where you're just kind of spending time? It's not going to be productive necessarily,
Right.
but you enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're talking about this because I feel like I'm in some kind of support group. I love the Golden Girls, and I went through a period when both my parents died within a few months of each other, and I was just inconsolable, and all I could do was watch the Golden Girls. So it was, I just so identify with your passion for it. But I'm wondering, was there somebody you liked the best on there?
I like, Dorothy, Beatrice Arthur.
She was
To me, she
good.
anchors the show. She's the funniest, the wittiest, the one who does the best, slow burn, and yet has a lot of heart deep down. And I don't like the episode where she has chronic fatigue and she tells off the doctor, "How dare you say I wasn't sick?" It's never mentioned again for the rest of the 18 more seasons or whatever. Chronic fatigue, never mentioned again. I hate when her son marries the older African American woman. They make a big deal about it. She's never mentioned again.
So when
They kept changing their children. The
Yes.
children were always different.
And they kept having little seeds of spin-offs like Empty Nest. When you see Dinah Manoff and Robert Mulligan and Kristen McNichol. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But does anyone else feel that they can re-watch the same movie or show more than, say, 3 or 4 times and not start to worry about yourself?
Mary Jo, the bartender.
I can watch shows so obsessively. Like, I taped all the soap operas. I used to have a VHS drawer that was just ER, Ally McBeal, and The Practice, because I'm obsessed with hour-long dramas. And I recently started writing a show based on all of these, and I have had to revisit them. And it's like the happiest, saddest thing. I'm up till 6 in the morning watching like ER, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, this isn't even good, like, at all, but it's so wonderful. And it's like, I was thinking about it, and I think they don't write characters the way they used to, where like, now we're so like joke-oriented or whatever, or like, I don't know. I just been thinking about how the characters seem so much more real, like from in the past, and now I'm like, ugh, the shows just seem so one-dimensional. I'm like, I'm not into it anymore.
I know what you mean. Right now, I feel like a lot of characters are really annoying.
Yeah.
Like the trend is to create like these sort of hateful people who are awful.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the trend to go back to nice people again, But I feel like Mary Tyler Moore was a nice person,
Well, on Mary Tyler Moore, just like Golden Girls, they're all deeply flawed but lovable people who create a family. The last episode of Mary Tyler Moore, she's falling apart crying and saying, "You are my family." I'm going to cry just thinking about it.
Oh, where they all hug each other and
Yeah, they can't
so
move. Like,
sweet.
now what do we do?
Yeah.
And we've all been to the situation where everyone's fired except the bozo. The only one left at the station is Ted
Yeah,
Knight.
yeah.
Yeah.
but also I feel like what's happening is with Mary Jo and with you, like there are these emotional heightened moments, and I guess you as a kid, when you're at your loneliest, that's when you seek the consolation, and then it sticks somehow. It just sort of sticks in your heart, right? And Mary Jo, maybe when you were watching Obsessing with ER the first time around, you were.
Oh, super lonely. I had no friends. I was staying up till like 6 in the morning at like 12 watching it.
Right,
Yes,
right.
I love these people.
And it
Yeah.
sticks with you,
Yeah,
right?
totally,
Yeah.
definitely.
And George Clooney, who had been in ER, was in a Golden Girls.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
you
that's
are.
right.
Yeah.
I also watched
He was on
Golden
Roseanne
Girls
too, and Facts of Life.
obsessively. I can watch any Golden Girls. It's the best show ever.
And one thing I love about Logo, my channel, is they have nonstop Roseanne and Facts of Life on many days.
But what happens when someone likes Full House, which is just a putrid show, but it sticks in their heart, and they become? I mean, you know what I
That's
mean?
fine. Everyone has their own comfort television.
Uh-huh.
I adore the Olsen twins, even if they killed Heath Ledger.
Anyone else have an observation? Yes.
Did you like Will and Grace?
Will and Grace.
I did. I thought Jack and what's her face?
Megan.
What was the character?
Karen.
Karen.
Karen, yeah.
Their dynamic as actors was just one of the most brilliant things ever on TV.
Yes.
The way they riffed on the material and just obviously had this chemistry. It was something magical.
Mm.
Agreed?
Yes.
You know, I'm Mexican. Half of what you're saying I don't understand. The shows you're talking about I don't understand. but
I love Cantinflas.
But what I love is the way you go from one sentence to the next and to the next. And I admire that in these movies in black and white, the American movies, all about this luxury of language,
Mm.
which I find in you. And so.
Thank you.
That's so nice. What a nice.
You
thing
don't
to
know what
say.
we're saying, but we're saying a lot of things.
No,
so-
I mean, I do
No, thank you.
understand, but the shows you're talking about, I haven't seen.
But.
But the luxury of your language and the by your energy of how you go from one sentence to the next.
I love
from
you.
one image to the
Oh my God, I
other,
love this woman.
And you always end, with.
You should have your own show.
Of happiness, of sweetness.
Yeah, exactly.
I just met Christina, who is the Spanish Oprah. You know Christina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize she was married to one of Miami Sound Machine from Gloria Estefan. Anyway, that was off topic.
But it's, you bring up a good point. There is, the way you write is so that I hear the energy of the movies that you obsess over.
Well, like one of the Pauline Kael was the critic I grew up adoring. She was the New Yorker critic, a world famous legend, and half the time I would see the movies that she was gushing about and think that was boring. There was nothing there. Her review was more interesting than the movie.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So that's what I aspire to. But I do feel passionate about the movies, and I want to convey that to people. I brought so many people to my apartment to watch The Room. It's like I love showing a virgin. Let me show you The Room. You're not gonna fucking believe this.
Right.
And every time it's jaw dropping.
Is there anything you've seen in the last 2 weeks that you've been like, oh my God, I can't believe how great this is?
Like Good Bad.
Both, like good and good bad.
Good Bad. I just caught up with this TV movie called These Old Broads. It was written by Carrie Fisher, in which her mother Debbie Reynolds plays basically herself. Joan Collins and Liz Taylor play themselves, and it's so horrible. It's like, how did Carrie Fisher write this? She is so witty. And why would she put her mother through this degrading thing after already sliming her in Postcards from the Edge?
Wow.
Where Debbie didn't even get the part. They went with Shirley MacLaine.
Right.
Who's also in These Old Broads, by the way. So I really recommend that. It's on Get TV all the time. That's channel 1284 on Time Warner.
And anything good?
Good. I liked Room.
Yeah.
Not The Room, but Room, the movie I mentioned earlier that was up for Best Picture, won Best Actress for Brie Larson. It's this rivetingly claustrophobic film about a mother and her son in captivity. She rolls him up in a rug. I won't give anything else away because you really should see it if you haven't. See it fresh, and it just takes you along. It's brilliant.
So you have a horror. That's not really a horror, but you do have a bit of a horror bent to you.
I do, and my other favorite movie is Psycho by Hitchcock.
Right.
And that I watched as a kid. Actually, my cousins would come down, we would watch it together, so it was a communal experience.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first transgender movie, right?
Yeah, I guess it was.
It was the first paranoid schizophrenic movie. It was really groundbreaking, and it
Yeah.
was just brilliantly handled. And Anthony Perkins gives such a great performance. It's a crime he wasn't even nominated.
I feel like there is a bit of a horror renaissance going on now. There's some really great movies being made now in the horror genre.
But
Yeah.
now it's over the top. It's called torture porn, and of course
Right.
everything's overdone. It's all screaming, blood and guts and buzzsaws. Hitchcock had
Yeah.
none of that.
No,
you don't even
no.
see the murder. You see chocolate sauce going down the drain.
I mean movies like what's it called? The
Witch?
The Witch definitely.
Babadook?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I didn't like
seen it?
Yeah, I
You
didn't
like
like
it?
it. No.
Oh, okay. Okay. My friend has a movie out you might like called The Invitation, which is
Plug.
which is good. Yeah, she deserves it. She's a good director. Anyone else have anything? Yes.
My button is Designing Women, but Full
Oh,
House
yeah,
reminded
same.
me, and it's funny to hear Full House is putrid,
Yeah.
but it was a show of my childhood, and it made me wonder, do you think that camp has to be like purposely sort of aiming for something like not hitting at all? Because to me, Full House is a kind of really disgusting camp, and I wonder like, is it that it aimed for like sweetness and became disgusting, or can you like aim for sort of like fury and weirdness and end up being campy in a good way?
Well, there are two kinds of camp. There's intentional camp, and then there's like Full House
Yeah.
camp, where it's aiming for something and just missing. But one man's camp is somebody else's comfort TV, so that's the genius of it. And the best Designing Women, speaking of camp, is when Dixie Carter has that incredible monologue about her sister, the beauty queen.
Night delights.
Yeah, I mean that. Did she get an Emmy? I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
No. What?
Frequently nominated.
Crazy.
But they also bring this idea of the intentional camp or not intentional camp. Like Brady Bunch is so much like Full House, I guess. But I enjoy Brady Bunch. But maybe it's because it just sort of hits me when I was a kid and I was like alone, lonely, and watching TV.
I never got that lonely. To me, that show makes my teeth hurt. It's just.
Oh, it does? Okay. So
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't get it.
interesting.
I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's funny to make
It's
fun
awful.
of it. I think it's just like Velveeta cheese that
Right.
stood out on the, refrigerator.
Right.
Stood out on the radiator too long or something. I like the Partridge Family.
Okay.
Oh,
But-
that's real cheese.
But the
Yeah, it's real cheese. And I liked Addams Family better than the Munsters.
uh-huh.
But I basically turned gay watching Tarzan. Because Ron Eli was so hot in that loincloth.
He was. And Batman is intentional camp, correct? Like.
Well, Adam West always resists the word camp. He really gets angry when people say that, I think because of the gay overtones. But I'm like,
Oh,
please, honey.
please,
Please, honey. The guest stars were Tallulah Bankhead, Burgess Meredith,
Yeah.
the fat guy from Baby Jade.
Right. Other questions?
Twilight Zone, were you
Twilight
into
Zone.
that?
Yes, totally. And I could watch, they have marathons every New Year's Day. I watch them over and over again. And the best one is Billy Mooney as the little kid, Anthony, who's the tyrant.
Yes, yes.
And the other one, Burgess Meredith, who was on Batman as a penguin, where his glasses break. His wife is finally
Can't
dead.
read, right.
He could read, but then his glasses break.
Right.
I love a twist ending.
One of the movies that became an obsession for our children, I don't know if you know it, is something called Strictly Ballroom.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Australian film.
Yes, did you see that and did you like it or?
I hated it. I resisted that whole wave of like Priscilla, Strictly Ballroom, all these kitschy Australian movies. Because I was going out every night, with drag queens and really living on the edge. Those movies were cotton candy for the masses.
But then it's the comfort. It's comfort for someone else.
That's
It's comfort when
fine.
someone's lonely. I'm getting the equation here. The equation is you have to be very lonely, and it hits you.
Yeah, but if you're lonely and you watch something you hate, it makes it even worse. I'd rather stare at a blank screen
Right.
than watch Brady Bunch when I'm lonely.
Right.
Or an infomercial would be fine.
Okay. Okay. We're getting somewhere here. Yes, right. Okay.
So you mentioned Psycho. Do you ever find that watching movies like that with younger people who have seen other things that are already borrowed, where they, like we watched it with our daughter who liked it, but she got it right away. She didn't have to wait till the end. She was like, oh, the guy dresses up as the mom and it's really him. Because there's been already a history of film that has borrowed from that.
Interesting.
Also, the new generation has a much quicker attention span. I mean, if you look at the old talk shows that are rerun on TV, they have 10-minute conversations with their guests, and they weren't even plugging movies. It was never let's cut to the clip. It was just a conversation with Joan Crawford. The kids, seeing Psycho now probably doesn't have the patience to sit. It's told in a slow building way.
Mm-hmm.
We have to find things out along the way. They're used to wham bang.
In the back there.
Just to fold a couple of different themes you've been talking about into one question, with New York and camp and horror and things like that, what are your feelings about Law and Order?
Right.
That's great.
The show or the thing?
The show.
Oh, the show? Well, I didn't watch it, but I liked that they used a lot of New York theater actors. They gave a lot of work to New York actors. And they were the first ones really to do that. Now it's common practice that you raid Broadway and put them all on TV, and it's great.
So, but your procedurals like that don't really.
No, it was.
float your boat?
You know what? I did watch. Is it CSI or one of those? Every episode was exactly the same, where somebody's committed a murder. They're pretty sure they have the person who did it. The black woman comes in with the DNA evidence. It's somebody else who did it.
Right.
Every episode of CSI.
Right, which is someone's comfort, I suppose, too.
Right.
Yes.
And I felt bad for this poor, wonderful African American actress who has I got the DNA.
Right. She's fine. She's making money.
In addition to there being a comfort aspect to these old things, is there also like a Peter Pan sort of aspect where you don't want to fully grow up and you want to go back to that childhood?
It is, yeah, you got it. It's a little bit of, I feel like I'm 12 again. It takes me back to that moment when the movie meant so much to me because my life was so bleak. It's not bleak now. My life is so exciting and fun. But it takes me back to that wonderful uplift I got for 2 hours in a movie theater.
Oh, it's like a drug. Wow. Yeah, Chase the Dragon.
And Liz Taylor to me is just the greatest.
Have you seen Sex and the City?
Sex and the City.
Yes, I enjoyed that. Yeah, that was like, it really was like the new Golden Girls, like the younger Golden Girls. It was the 4 women looking for sex. It was the same thing.
And
there's the slutty one, the smart one,
But same with girls. It's like there's always this like 4 people doing things, and one slutty and
it's
one
a formula that works.
straight-laced. Yeah.
But you know what? That's Valley of the Dolls. The 3 women in Hollywood, the nice one, the slutty one, the smart one. And that started in the 30s in Hollywood. There were movies like 3 Smart Girls, 3 Broadway Girls, Joan Blondell, Ann Sutter, It was always that formula. It works. It really works.
Interesting. One more question. Yes.
I have a question. So what do you guys think about like live streaming and just like how Netflix and HBO Go has changed the way we watch TV?
It's
nowadays?
great. The more venues for entertainment, the better.
You think like watching like 24 hours straight of
Whatever, why not? More options. That's what it's all about nowadays.
But you're not doing that. You're like, you have.
No, but I see so many movies, and I do want to see more of everything.
Has it changed
But
anything? Like
it has changed. There's more shows. There's more everything.
Instead of watching it week to week, you get to watch everything in a weekend.
People can binge watch. They can do whatever they want. It's all about options, and that's the glory of living today.
I feel like I almost do that, but also I pause halfway through and go to sleep, and then you know what I mean? Like I can control when I stop it. That's the other thing.
You can control it?
Well, like I just watched all of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt's second season, and but I stopped halfway through because I was so tired, and you can't do that. That's something new that you can do. Yes.
Sorry, you said you also review theater.
Yes.
So how does that work with the film? We haven't talked about that at all here.
What do you mean? How does that work?
I mean, what do you see the difference? Because I personally love theater, and I like movies, but I actually like theater more. But
My theater is actually my favorite because as a kid, while I was watching movies, I was fantasizing about going to Broadway because I would see on variety shows like the Ed Sullivan Show snippets from Broadway musicals, and I was like, "This is for me." I knew it. And the first show they took us to as a kid was Man of La Mancha, and I hated it. It was so brown, It was very dreary, set in a dungeon or something. And the second show was a little review called The Me Nobody Knows, and it was very sincere and sweet, but it was not what I wanted. I wanted like chorus girls and high kicking production numbers. And then in the 70s, when I was in Columbia, I became the theater critic of the daily paper there, the Columbia Spectator. And in 1 year, there was the original Chorus Line and the original Chicago, both of which were better than any revival. And from that moment, I was like, I'm a theater queen for life. Theater means even more to me than movies, and that's saying a lot.
Is there something you look for as a critic when you're watching theater that you're like, I don't know, is there some quality that you can grab onto that you definitely look for each time?
Just somebody with that spunk and that personality. Like I just saw a show called Waitress, the musical, based on the movie, which is a sweet little movie. It's a sweet musical. But in the middle of kind of just predictable doings, this guy named Christopher Fitzgerald, he plays the guy who's fixating on the skinny little meek waitress. He does this production number that, like, you'll never get away from me kind of number. And just the whole show turns upside down. He has that Broadway spark. It's really old school shtick that he's doing. And it's magical. And that's what I look for. It's something you can't even look for or wait for. It just happens, and it just uplifts the whole evening.
So after all these years as a critic, you really do have a sense of generosity for the performer, right? I mean,
I do. I have much more feeling for them now than when I started my column in '84, because then I was just snarky and everything was horrible. I wanted to make waves by cutting everybody down. But I have so much feeling now for what people in showbiz go through, because I've been through the ups and downs myself.
Right.
When you cover showbiz, you have a certain parallel type of career sometimes on a much smaller scale than real celebrities. And I know what it's like, and it's the most transitory career to have, is to be an actor. You have a great hit show, then it's over, and then you have to start from scratch and get your next job. Or you finally get a show and it flops, it runs for 2 weeks. And you have to get back on your feet again, and you have to try not to read the reviews, because there might be something bad that's going to spin your head around forever.
So you've become more generous as a critic over the years.
I do. I have more feeling for what performers go through.
Oh, that's interesting. But you, every now and then you do give a bad review, of course, yes.
Well, that's my job, and I'm not going to lie to my readers.
Right.
But I'm one of the nicer critics these days. I started out as probably the nastiest, except for John Simon. And he was just so hateful for all the wrong reasons. But now I won't just slam something. I'll try to give a more measured take on what the show's about.
As opposed to film, is it okay for there to be like a campy, good, bad theater?
Yeah, I just wrote a column about, I saw the 3 worst Broadway shows of all time. Good, bad. Carrie the musical. We were talking about the Carrie remake.
Yeah.
This was worse than the Carrie remake. We called it the ultimate period musical. Moose Murders, which was an atrocity in the 80s, just a horrible bad taste comedy. And the other one was called In My Life, and this was just like 6 years ago, and this was a musical about a guy with Tourette's syndrome. But he was adorable. He looked like a boy bander. And he fell in love with a girl with OCD. And it was written by a serial rapist who wrote the song You Light Up My Life and killed himself before he went to trial. And his son is the murderer from the Soho House murder. So that family has a lot to answer to, especially this musical about Tourette's syndrome.
Wow, I want to see the musical of that musical.
There has to be a biopic. There has to be a Lifetime movie with Marky Post.
Any other questions?
I don't know what part she played.
What did you think about? I really like Smash, even though it.
I was on the last episode.
That's right.
And no one saw it because that was on opposite the behind the candelabra that everybody watched. And people didn't even DVR the last Smash. And I was like, I finally got on Smash after 2 years. I had a whole scene. And everyone's watching Michael Douglas as Liberace.
That was a good bad show.
It was.
That was a very good bad show. I could not stop watching it.
I tried to elevate it.
Yeah, that was incredibly.
I did see you. That's right.
Thank you.
That was such a good bad
That's
show.
one. I thought, people would be begging me for autographs. No one saw it.
Yeah, we have to go back and watch it. John Simon, the critic?
Yeah, you got word from Frank Rich.
Well, Frank Rich was very critical, but John Simon was biased and bigoted. And first of all, he would attack people for their looks. He would attack Liza Minnelli for looking like a beagle. And he was homophobic, and everything about him was so awful. And he's still around and still writing for some rag.
Wow. You're not that way.
But he's brilliant too. That's the problem. He was a brilliant intellectual writer.
It's just a anger inside.
Pauline Kael even had her little biases. She was homophobic.
What do you feel like your biases are?
Oh, that's interesting. I probably hate everybody. But I try to work out my issues, you know.
You don't like it when people are dishonest. That's I think
That's true.
I can see that in your stuff. You don't like it when people are dishonest. Okay, Mr. Musto, we've psychologized you. We think you're a great person.
I'm totally healed. Thank you.
You're totally
everybody.
healed. You can watch all the old movies you want to. It's
Yay.
totally healthy. and
Going
great.
home for Golden Girls.
Thank you for
Thank
spending
you,
time with
everyone.
us.